Captain Underpants and the Revolting Revenge of the Radioactive Roboboxers. The 10th epic novel by Dav Pilkey. For now, I'll read chapter 1 to chapter 14, since this book is so long. Let's go right into it. Help! The road is in big trouble. Maybe the comic book on the next page will help to straighten things out. The top secret truth about Captain Underpants. Once upon a time, there was two cool kids named George and Harold. We the boss daddies. Me too. They had a really mean principal named Mr. Krub. Blah blah blah. One day, they hypnotized him. You'll obey us. Okay. They made him behave he was a superhero. You're now Captain Underpants. Okay. It was funny at first. Ha ha ha. Tra-la-la. But then Mr. Krub jumped out the window. Wait. Mr. Krub really thought he was Captain Underpants. He got in lots of trouble. Come back, bub. No way. I'm a hero. One time, a big monster attacked the school. War. It tried to eat on Mr. Krub. George found some superpower juice in a UFO. Glub glub. Drink up, bub. Then Mr. Krub got superpowers. Now he can even fly and stuff. Tra-la-la. The worst part is, whenever Mr. Krub hears somebody snap their fingers, snap, he turns into Captain Underpants. And whenever Captain Underpants gets water on his head, he turns back into Mr. Krub. Blah blah blah. So anyways, in our last adventure, there was an evil guy named Tippy Trousers. That's me. He built a big robo-suit. Then he climbed inside. I'm going to destroy Captain Underpants. Oh yeah? They got in a big fight. Yo, my ice ray. Zonk zap. Missed me. Tippy accidentally threw his feet to the ground. Oh no, my feet are frozen. Haha. Clack. Rast, he broke my robot. But Tippy's Robo-Pants was also a time machine. I'm going to escape it going back in time. Oh no! Tippy's Robo-Pants went back in time 5 years ago. Some police saw the Robo-Pants and got scared. Yeah! They got so scared they all went bonkers. Mr. Krub got blamed for the whole thing. You're fired. I'm a victim of circumstance. Now, the future has changed. Everything is different. Since Mr. Krub got fired 5 years ago, he never got hypnotized by George and Harold. Since Mr. Krub didn't get hypnotized, he never turned into Captain Underpants. Since Captain Underpants doesn't exist, he wasn't there to save the road. Who saved us? Beats me. Tippy realized his mistake was when he came back to the present. Oh no, the road got destroyed. All because I scared those bullies. Tippy vowed to make things right. I'll fix this mess. But then, stomp. Who save us now? Chapter 1. George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the giant zombie nerd on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the giant zombie nerd on the right with the t-shirt set and the back haircut. Remember that now. If you read our last adventure, you may recall the final terrifying scene where Tippy Tinkle Trousers ended up cowering beneath the gigantic foot of zombie nerd Harold. You're probably horrified when the super-sized shoe slammed down to the ground, leaving behind a squishy red stain. You may even have commented on the surprising inappropriateness of such a murderous and bloody scene appearing in a children's book. It's fun to feel offended, isn't it? Unfortunately, I'm sorry to have to tell you that there was no murder at the end of the last book. There wasn't even any blood. What happened at the end of our last story is something called Misdirection. It's what happens when you are led to believe that something is true, but in reality, it's not true at all. Misdirection happens a lot in real life, especially in politics, history, education, medicine, marketing, science, religion, and the Oprah Winfrey Network. There's often misdirection out there. Life can get a little confusing. But don't worry, this epic novel contains no misdirection whatsoever. This legendary tome will explain everything from our recent narrative complexities to the vast mysteries of our universe. By the time you get to page 210, you'll know it all. You'll be a genius. You'll be smarter than the most brilliant scientists who ever walked the earth. So let's get started, shall we? If you've ever been to the zoo, you might have noticed that really big creatures move kinda slowly. Take elephants for example. They don't move very fast even when they're in a hurry. Sure, they might cover a lot of ground, but that's only because they're so big. If you were to shrink an elephant down to the size of a house cat, you'd be shocked at how long it takes for them to get from one place to another. It's so darn slow that it wouldn't be long before somebody changed the story of the tortoise and the hare into the more appropriate, the miniature elephant and the hare. It's the same thing with lunchroom zombie nerds. Sure, they're big and scary and stuff, but they move really slowly. So if a zombie nerd never lifts his foot over you with the intent of stomping you into a puddle, don't worry. You actually have a few minutes before you're in any real danger. To be found this out the hard way. Zombie nerd Haro lifted his foot above Tippy's head. Tippy screamed in horror. Then Tippy screamed again and again. Then he checked his watch and screamed some more. Finally, Tippy's voice got a little scratchy from all that screaming. So he got up and walked over to one of the few remaining stores on the planet to buy some cherry-throat things. While he was there, he purchased a new suit and bow tie, were part of a magazine, and got a foot massage. On his way out of the store, Tippy noticed an extra-large novelty ketchup pack that was on sale, so he bought it and dragged it back to the scene of the crime. Zombie Nerd Haru's shoe was still coming down slowly as Tippy placed the extra-large novelty ketchup pack under it and walked away. Tippy climbed back into his robo-pants just as Zombie Nerd Haru's shoe hit the pavement and crushed the giant novelty ketchup pack. Bright red stains switched out from beneath the zombified shoe as Tippy's robo-pants disappeared in the crackling glow of light. You see, Tippy had mistakenly caused some trouble the last time he had gone back in time, so he had to go back again to undo the damage he had done. But before I can tell you that story, I have to give you this warning. Chapter 2. Let's get serious, folks. Did you ever notice how grown-ups hate it when kids are having fun? Seriously, when was the last time you were doing something fun and some adult came over and made you stop? If you're like most kids, you're probably reading this very book because some adult wanted you to quit playing video games or watching TV. If you don't believe me, try this experiment. Grab a few of your friends, go into the corner of a room, and start goofing around. Make some noise, start laughing and cheering, and maybe shout a woohoo or two. It's been scientifically proven that 89.4% of all grown-ups drop whatever they're doing and rush over to put a stop to whatever nonsense they're up to. You have to wonder, why are most grown-ups like this? Weren't they ever kids themselves? Didn't they enjoy laughing and cheering and goofing around when they were young? And so, when did they stop? And why? Now, I certainly can't speak for all adults, but I'm going to anyway. I think it's a lot easier for adults to stomp out someone else's fun than it is for them to reflect on their own life and figure out where it all went miserably wrong. It's just too depressing for grown-ups to ponder all the decades of compromises, failures, laziness, fear, and regrettable choices that slowly transformed them from running, jumping, laughing, fun-loving kids into grumpy, complaining, calorie counting, easily offended, peace and quiet demanding grouches. In other words, it's harder to look within yourself than it is to shout, "Hey you kids, cut that out!" Keeping this in mind, you might now want to smile or laugh while reading this book. And when you get to the flip around part, I suggest you to flip with the bored and interested look on your face, or some adult will probably take this book away from you and make you read Sarah Planet Tall instead. Don't say I didn't warn you. Chapter 3. Tippy returns again. Tippy Tinkle Trousers was in big trouble. He had zapped himself back in time 5 years and accidentally frightened 4 bullies. This thoughtfulness mistakes an emotional series of events that ultimately got Mr. Krub fired. And since there was no Mr. Krub, there was no Captain Underpants. And since there was no Captain Underpants, there was nobody to save the road from the terrible devastation caused by the villain from our first 3 epic novels. Tippy decided there was only one thing to do: go back in time and stop himself from scaring those bullies. But in order to do this, he would have to go back in time before the last time he had gone back in time. So Tippy set his Tinko time travel meter for 10 minutes before the last time he had arrived in the past and pressed the away we go button. After several seconds of made-for television style special effects, Tippy found himself transported to the awful night of the terrifying thunderstorm. Everything looked very familiar. He knew at any moment the 4 bullies would come running from the school and tear across the football field. They would come face to face with him, a slightly younger version of him, and only he could stop it all from happening. Tippy hid behind the side of the school and waited as the wind howled ferociously. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of lightning struck a nearby power line. The electricity in the school went out, and all of the windows became dark. Tippy listened closely and heard the sounds of squealing and slapping and shuffling. It sounded as if a terrible struggle was taking place inside the school. Then suddenly, the back door of the school crashed open, and before petrified bullies shoved their way outside. Quickly, he darted toward the football field. This was Tippy's big chance. He aimed his freely beam 4000 after running delinquents and zapped them, all with the mini mountain of molecularly modified ice. The 4 bullies were frozen in place. Tippy scanned the boys with his life system monitor and found them to be perfectly preserved. The carbonite and Tibana gas infused ice has been programmed to remain solid for 15 minutes. That's long enough for Tippy to do his thing. Quickly, Tippy turned toward the football field where a ball of blue lightning was growing bigger and bigger. Suddenly, it exploded in a blinding flash. And there, where the ball of lightning had been, was a giant pair of robotic pants. "Boy, that was a close one," said a voice from inside the depths of the newly arrived RoboPants. "Captain Underpants is a lot stronger than I thought." The zipper of the nearly arrived robotic trousers opened, and a tiny man peeked out to marvel at the road of 5 years ago. But to his surprise, he saw an identical copy of himself straight at him and tapping his gigantic robotic foot impatiently. "Who are you?" asked the newly arrived Tippy. "I'm you," shouted future Tippy. "You're from the future." "What's going on?" asked Tippy. "I'm here to stop you from scaring those kids over there," said future Tippy, pointing at the fallen bullies. "Why?" said Tippy. "What's so important about these kids?" "I have no idea," said future Tippy. "All I know is I scared those kids when I came back here last time, and apparently it caused a chain reaction that resulted in the total destruction of the Earth. More or less." "I see," said Tippy. "So what do we do now?" Future Tippy looked at his watch. "Those kids are going to thaw out in 8 minutes and 11 seconds, he said. "We've got to be gone by then." I reached into the cockpit of his RoboPants and grabbed one of his very first inventions, the Shrinky Pixie Dalton. Tippy aimed it at the younger version of himself and pressed the button. Zerk! A powerful beam of energy blasted the newly arrived Tippy Tinko trousers and his gigantic pair of RoboPants and shrunk them down to the size of a baseball. Big Tippy reached down and picked up a tiny version of himself. "What do you do that for?" shouted Tiny Tippy. "I can't very well have 2 of us running around," said Big Tippy. "I've got to keep an eye on you." Big Tippy tucked Tiny Tippy into his jacket pocket and checked his watch again. 4 minutes and 16 seconds, he muttered to himself. He looked over at the 4 bullies encased in the now cracking ice melt. Big Tippy turned to his Tinko time travel meter and programmed it for a date in the future. Time was running out. The ice around the bullies was disintegrating fast, so Tippy sneaked away to the center of town, pressed his away we go button, and disappeared into a ball of blue lightning. 2 seconds later, the ice mountain that had encased and preserved the bullies disintegrated completely. Without skipping a beat, the four frightened friends continued their mad dash away from the school. As they ran across the football field toward their homes, something about Kipper and his friends changed forever. They would never again be the same despisable bullies they once were. Chapter 4, Fixing the Future. Big Tippy had set his Tinkle time travel meter for a sunny afternoon in October, 4 years in the future. He arrived, as usual, in a giant ball of blue lightning that grew bigger and bigger until it exploded in a blinding flash. "What's going on out there?" cried Tiny Tippy. "I can't see a thing." "Shh," said Big Tippy, as he showed Tiny Tippy down into the deep, darkened depths of his jacket pocket. Big Tippy listened carefully. He heard the voice of a child muttering, "This can't be good." Tippy unzipped the zipper of his roll pants and peeked out. To his delight, the roll looked like it usually did. No moon, no destruction, no giant zombie, no moon rocks. Everything seemed pretty normal. "Hey, it's Professor Poopy Pants," shouted a small boy from whom Tippy recognized immediately. Suddenly, two calls standing nearby started to laugh, which angered Tippy. "Stop laughing," shouted Tippy. "My name is no longer Professor Poopy Pants. I changed it to Tippy Tinkle Trousers." The two calls laughed even harder. "And I've got a special surprise for anybody who thinks my new name is funny," said the furious professor. Tippy pressed the button on his Freezy Beam 4000, causing it to rise from the depths of his roll pants. He set the freeze rate for 20 minutes and zapped the cops, transforming them into frozen statues. "My Freezy Beam 4000 will take care of anybody who stands in my way," said Tippy. "And now," he said with a wicked smile, "it's time for my revenge." "Oh no," screamed George. "Here we go again," screamed Harold. Tippy chased George and Harold and their two pets, Zulu and Crackers, through town, zapping his Freezy Beam 4000 at them and laughing maniacally. The chase lasted all afternoon and into the night. The four friends hid behind buildings, inside trash bins, under bridges, and even down in the sewer. But it didn't matter where they sought refuge because Tippy Tinkle Trousers always found them. But the morning of the next day, our heroes had found a hiding place behind some bushes near the park. "What are you going to do?" whispered George. "There's nowhere else to hide." "I don't know," whispered Harold. George and Harold looked after two pets, shivering with them in the morning mist. "We're not going to make it," whispered George. "There's no reason that Zulu and Crackers should have to suffer." Harold's eyes began to water. "You're right," he whispered. George and Harold petted their two friends sadly as they devised a plan to return to the Dinosaur Age. "You could use the purple potty to take Crackers back home where we found him," said George. "Yeah," said Harold. "And Zulu could stay there with him. They'll both be safe there." As soon as it was clear, the four friends sneaked away from the bushes and headed for Jerome Horace Elementary School, carefully avoiding major streets and intersections. It was almost noon by the time George and Harold and their two pets reached the school. Cautiously, they sneaked through the front door and dashed up the stairs to the library. "Hey, Buzz!" shouted Mr. Krub angrily. "Where have you kids been?" George and Harold looked down and saw Mr. Krub carrying a large cardboard box. "Well," Mr. Krub shouted, "get down here and explain yourself." George and Harold looked after two pets and continued running up the stairs. Mr. Krub was furious. His day hadn't started out very well. For some strange reason, all the red curtains in his office had been disappearing and he wasn't happy about it. So Mr. Krub had driven angrily to the store, bought a replacement box of curtains, started a big fight with the cashier, got a flat tire on the way home, and now his crew and students were bringing animals into school, ignoring his commands and running up the stairs. "You kids get back here!" shouted Mr. Krub as he chased after the four frightened friends. George and Harold and Crackers and Zulu raced to the top of the stairs, dashed into the library, and locked the door behind them. There they beheld their old troublesome nemesis, the purple potty. It was a homemade time machine that had a few quirks, to say the least, and our heroes approached it cautiously. "You still remember how to use this thing?" asked Harold. "Of course, it's George. We just needed yesterday morning. All I have to do was set the controller for 65 million years ago, then pull down the chain. Easy, squeezy, mac and cheesy. Suddenly, Mr. Krub reached the library door and struggled with the locked doorknob. The boys heard a shuffling sound followed by the jingling of keys. "Let's boogie!" cried George. The four friends climbed into the purple potty and George closed the door. At that very moment, Mr. Krub came crashing through the library door with his box of red curtains. He ran to the purple potty and banged on the door. "I know you're in there," he screamed. "You can't hide from me forever!" "Hurry!" cried Harold as George fiddled with the controller. "We've got to get out of here!" "I'm working as fast as I can!" cried George. Suddenly, a gigantic dark shadow filled the library. Mr. Krub turned to see a huge robotic pair of trousers at the window. The zipper unzipped and Tippy Tinkle trousers peeked through the cavernous opening. "I've got you now," he shouted. "Ha ha ha!" Tippy reached for the button on his Freezy Beam 4000 as Mr. Krub roared in terror. At that very moment, George finished setting the controller for 65 million years ago, and he pulled down on the chain. All at once, there was a brilliant flash of green light and the purple potty, along with Mr. Krub and the cardboard box, disappeared into a whirlwind of electrified ozone. Chapter 5. Tiny Tippy's Tremendous Task. "Ras," screamed Tippy as he watched the purple potty disappear. "Those kids have a time machine and I don't know where they went." "What's going on?" cried Tiny Tippy from the depths of Big Tippy's pocket. "I can't see a thing." "Those kids took off in a time machine," Big Tippy barked at the miniature version of himself, and they the Captain Underpants with them. "Where did they go?" asked Tiny Tippy. "How should I know?" Big Tippy yelled. "Hey, I've got an idea," said Tiny Tippy. "Why don't I go back in time and find out?" "Good idea, me," said Big Tippy. He reached down and placed Tiny Tippy in the library. "You go back in time 10 minutes and listen to everything they say. And when I show up, tell me where they went." "You got it," said Tiny Tippy. He set his Tinkle Time travel meter for 10 minutes ago, and in a blue crackling instant, he was gone. Tiny Tippy arrived in the same spot he had left, only it was now 10 minutes earlier. He heard some people running up the stairs, so he decided to hide behind a trash can. Suddenly, George, Harold, and the two pets dashed into the room and locked the door behind them. Tiny Tippy watched as the boys tiptoed toward the tall, time-traveling toilet. "Do you still remember how to use this thing?" asked Harold. "Of course," said George. "We just need it yesterday morning. All I have to do is set the controller for 65 million years ago and pull down on the chain. Easy, squeezy, mac and cheesy." "Aha!" muttered Tiny Tippy. "You're going back in time to the Mesozoic area." Tiny Tippy watched as the four friends climbed into the time machine and closed the door. He saw Mr. Krub crash through the library door and bang on the lavender laboratory. Then he saw himself, the big version of himself that is, appear out the window. "I've got it now!" shouted Big Tippy. "Ha ha ha!" Suddenly, there was a brilliant flash of green light and the purple potty, along with Mr. Krub and his cardboard box, disappeared, the whirlwind of electrified ozone. "Rats," from Tippy as he watched the purple potty disappear. "Those kids have a time machine and I don't know where they went." "I do," said Tiny Tippy as he stepped out from behind the garbage can. "Who are you?" said Big Tippy. "I'm Tiny Tippy," said Tiny Tippy. "That's impossible," said Big Tippy. "Tiny Tippy is right here." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a miniature version of himself, who had been complaining because he couldn't see a thing. "I'm 10 minutes older than that guy," said Tiny Tippy. "Send me back in time so I could find out where those kids went to." "Oh, I get it," said Big Tippy. "Good idea, me. Where'd they go?" "They went backwards in time to 65 million years ago," said Tiny Tippy. "Aha," said Big Tippy and slightly younger Tiny Tippy to themselves simultaneously. "You're going back in time to the Mesozoic era." Big Tippy picked up Tiny Tippy and shoved him into his pocket next to slightly younger Tiny Tippy. "Let's all go back to the dinosaur age, shall we? If we time it right, we can get there just before the purple potty arrives." Chapter 6. 65 million years ago. The primitive midday sky lit up with several blinding flashes as the purple potty suddenly appeared on the top of an ancient tree. Jordan Harwood had successfully brought Crackers back to where they had found him. But when they opened the door of the purple potty, they discovered they also bought a stowaway. "What the heck is going on here?" cried Mr. Krub as he hung from a branch high up in the treetop. "Oh no," cried George. "Mr. Krub must have been standing too close to the purple potty when we zapped backwards in time. He got zapped back with us." Harwood reached out his hand to grab hold of Mr. Krub. "How could things get any worse?" he asked. Suddenly the tree started to shake. Boom, boom, boom went the tree. Jordan Harwood looked down and saw Tippy's gigantic robo pants kicking the side of the tree. "What's he doing here?" cried Harwood. "I don't know," said George, "but I think we're about to fall." The horrible kicking continued and the tree shook wildly. Finally, the purple potty slid sideways and toppled over. "We're doomed!" screamed Harwood as they all fell. The purple potty cracked and split apart as it tumbled down the side of the tree. Mr. Krub fell too, smacking against every branch on the way down. Suddenly, the purple potty hit the ground with a terrible crash and broke apart into a thousand pieces. Mr. Krub hit the ground too, but was surprised to find out that he wasn't hurt a bit. Big Tippy kicked through the wreckage of the purple potty, but could not find any trace of Jordan Harwood or the piss. "Where did they go?" he asked. "Look, up there!" cried the two tiny Tippies who were peeking out of Big Tippy's pockets. Crackers had grabbed Jordan Harwood and Zulu at the last second. "Good boy, Crackers," cried George. "You saved us." "Not for long," screamed Big Tippy as he peered peevishly from a portal on top of his robo pants. Jordan Harwood looked down at Mr. Krub, who was still trying to figure out how he'd fallen 60 feet and not gotten hurt. The two boys snapped their fingers. Suddenly, a welcome smile spread across Mr. Krub's face. Immediately, he pulled off his shoes and socks. He unclipped his tie and ripped off his shirt. He grabbed a red curtain from the cardboard box beside him and tied it around his neck as he wiggled out of his pants. Captain Underpants was back, and Tippy Tinkle Trousers and his two tiny twins were in for the fight of their lives. Chapter 7. Two Tiny Traitors. Jordan Harwood ran through the thick jungle foliage with Crackers and Zulu flying above them. Captain Underpants decided to tag along too, just for fun. Big Tippy jumped into the back of a nearby Tyrannosaurus Rex and chased after them. "You can't run forever," shouted Big Tippy. "When I catch you guys, I'm gonna tear you apart." "Can we help?" asked the tiny Tippies who were tucked away in Big Tippy's jacket pocket. "No," yelled Big Tippy sternly. "Do keep quiet while I take care of business. This is a job for a man, not two little twerps like you." As the chase continued, the two tiny Tippies grumbled to themselves. "Boy, I'm getting tired of the giant jerk bossing us around," said Tiny Tippy. "Me too," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. "He thinks he's such a big shot just because he's huge. I sure will wish I still had my goosey growth for thousands," said Tiny Tippy. "Then I can make myself big again." "I was just thinking the same thing," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. "But unfortunately, we stored the goosey growth for thousands in the top of our robo-suit, and Captain Underpants destroyed it back in Chapter 8 of our last epic novel." "Hey," cried Tiny Tippy, "why don't we go forward in time to Chapter 8 of our last epic novel? We could grab the goosey growth 4,000 and make ourselves gigantic." "I like the way you think, me," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. So while Big Tippy chased everybody through the treacherous jungles of the Cretaceous period, the two tiny Tippies set their tiny travel meters for the night of the big battle from Chapter 8 of our last epic novel. Big Tippy was so engrossed on his pursuit of our heroes, he didn't even notice the teensy-weensy blue sparks of flashing light emanating from his pocket as two devious doppelgangers which disappeared in a whiff of trivial trovosphere. Chapter 8. Mission Improbable. Chapter 8. Missions Improbable. Instantly, the two tiny Tippies fast forward in time, only to find themselves knee-deep in something creamy, coconutty, and marshmallowy. Tinny, said a mother who was setting her dinner table, 2 little pairs of pants that are walking around in our brown shell salad. Oh really, said her son, and I'm the one seeing a therapist. Tiny Tippy, a slightly younger Tiny Tippy, crawled out of the serving bowl and took off the pineapple chunks and mandarin orange slices that had stuck to their legs. Then they jumped to the floor and slipped through the mail slot in the front door. Outside, they could hear the crashing sound of the terrifying battle between Captain Underpants and Big Tippy. The 2 Tiny Tippy ran toward the noises until they arrived at the school football field. Captain Underpants had just started pulling on Tippy's robo-arms. One by one, the rivets in the robo-suit steel would begin to pop. Captain Underpants yanked and tugged and pulled, and finally the robo-suit tore in half with a terrible clank. Tiny Tippy and the slightly younger Tiny Tippy ran over to the place where Captain Underpants had dropped the upper portion of the robo-suit. Quickly, they searched through the twisted metal until they found what they were looking for, the goosey grove for Delvin. Outside, they could hear the crackling sounds of Big Tippy zapping himself backwards in time. A blinding flash lit up the goosey grove for Delvin from the wreckage and carried it away with them through the parking lot. Soon, they came to a darkened street behind some old warehouses. Okay, said Tiny Tippy, you zap me, then I'll zap you. Hey, said slightly younger Tiny Tippy, how come you get to go first? Because I'm slightly older than you, said Tiny Tippy, and slightly more mature. Alright, said slightly younger Tiny Tippy, who could not argue with the fact that Tiny Tippy was indeed 10 minutes before mature than himself. Let's just do this thing and get it over with. He aimed the goosey grove for Delvin at Tiny Tippy and jumped up on the button. And before you could even say "Glazert," a beam of energy zapped Tiny Tippy, causing him to grow 30 feet tall. Zap me again, said Tiny Tippy. Alright, said slightly younger Tiny Tippy. But then you zap me, right? Sure, said Tiny Tippy. I promise. Glazert. It went another bright beam of energy. This time Tiny Tippy grew to be 60 feet tall. Ha ha ha, he laughed. Behold, I have been reborn as Super Mega Tippy. My turn, said the younger Tiny Tippy. Super Mega Tippy reached down and grabbed the goosey grove for Delvin. He tucked it into the cup holder on his electrical panel and waved goodbye to slightly younger Tiny Tippy. Hey, cried slightly younger Tiny Tippy, what about me? Sorry, said Super Mega Tippy, but this is a job for a man, not a little twerp like you. Chapter 9. Meanwhile, 7 pages ago, 65 million years ago, Big Tippy had chased our heroes. Okay, chapter 9 later. Thanks for watching. Chapter 9. Meanwhile, 7 pages ago, 65 million years earlier, Big Tippy had chased our heroes to the jagged edge of a cliff overlooking a lake. Crackers grabbed George and Haro by their shirt collars, and they all sailed safely over the edge of the cliff to join Captain Underpants in the clouds. Big Tippy Tyrannosaurus Rex screeched to a halt at the cliff's edge and roared ferociously at the 5 floating friends. We won! Captain Underpants laughed at Tippy. Now it's our turn to chase you. This isn't a game, yelled Big Tippy. This is serious. He leaped off to the neck of the T-Rex and grabbed Captain Underpants with his patent robotic extendo-flex mechanic gripper. Together, they fell 1,000 feet into the lake below. When they emerged from the depths of the lake, something had changed. Tippy was still just as mean and orny as ever, but Captain Underpants looked different. What the heck is going on here? Yelled the angry-looking hero. Oh no, cried George. Captain Underpants got water on his head. He changed back into Mr. Krub. Quick, Crackers, called Haro. Fly us down there as fast as you can. Crackers glided down toward the tempestuous struggle below, and the boys snapped their fingers with all their might. But it did no good. Mr. Krub's head was still soaking wet, so he could not change back into Captain Underpants. Whoa, look what I just figured out, cried Big Tippy. Captain Underpants turns back into a crabby old elementary school principal whenever he gets wet. You leave him alone, yelled George, still snapping his fingers in vain. Yeah, cried Harold. It's not a fair fight anymore. Wow, laughed Big Tippy incredulously. You gotta be the world's easiest superhero to defeat. I could have destroyed him with a squirt gun. Suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the road around them. Then came the footsteps. Terrible, deafening, tumultuous footsteps that shook the earth with each thundering stomp. Finally, a massive shadow spread across the lake. Big Tippy looked up. It was Super Mega Tippy. Hey, shouted Big Tippy. He quickly checked his jacket pocket and found it to be empty. Where'd you come from? How'd you get so big? Where's the other one? None of that is important now, said Super Mega Tippy. What's important now is who's in charge. Hey, you'll never believe this, said Big Tippy, ignoring his diabolical double. I just figured out that if you get Captain Underpants wet, he loses his superpowers. Its weakness is water, said Super Mega Tippy. Wow, really? No, said Big Tippy. I couldn't believe it myself. Hey, I'm gonna destroy him real quick, and we can get out of here and go rule the road and stuff. I'm not going to destroy him, said Super Mega Tippy. I am. Now hold on, Bub, said Big Tippy. I caught him, so I'm gonna destroy him. Oh yeah, said Super Mega Tippy, with a growl that made the surface of the lake tremble. Well, I'm bigger than you, so I'm gonna decide who destroys who. He took a giant step toward Big Tippy and reached down with an Extendo-Flex mechanic gripper. Not so fast, cried Big Tippy. He pressed the button on his control panel, causing the back of his rubber pants to lower. Suddenly, a gigantic metal arm emerged from the depths of Tippy's giant robo-rear, revealing a 40-ton thermonuclear bomb. You take one step closer and I'll blow us all to smithereens, said Big Tippy. You're forgetting something, yelled Super Mega Tippy. I have a bomb too, and it's a lot bigger than yours. Super Mega Tippy took a step closer as Big Tippy pressed the button. Suddenly, a light on the side of the bomb began to flash red. A computerized voice emanating from the bomb's arming system began the countdown. This bomb would detonate in 60 seconds, said the voice. You pressed the button? Screamed Super Mega Tippy incredulously. I can't believe you actually pressed the button. I don't care, cried Big Tippy. I've been working on my revenge for years. I'm not going to let you rob me of this moment. I don't care if it kills me too. This bomb will detonate in 45 seconds, said the bomb. I can't turn these bombs off, you know, said Super Mega Tippy. Once the countdown starts, it's over. I told you, I don't care, said Big Tippy. I just want to be the one who finally destroys Captain Underpants. Super Mega Tippy reached down with an uncoiling Extendo-Flex mechanic gripper and cut Mr. Krub free. Hey, screamed Big Tippy, what are you doing? He's mine, said Super Mega Tippy as he drew back his foot. But what about me, said Big Tippy. What about my bomb? Your bomb? Your problem, said Super Mega Tippy as he kicked Big Tippy with all his might. Chapter 10. What really killed the dinosaurs? No! Screamed Big Tippy as he sailed into the clouds at an incredible speed. This bomb will detonate in 30 seconds, said the bomb. Big Tippy flew across North America, soaring faster and faster through the stratosphere. This bomb would detonate in 15 seconds, said the bomb. Big Tippy began to lose altitude as he sailed toward the Gulf of Mexico. This bomb will detonate in 5 seconds, said the bomb. 4, 3, 2, 1. Finally, Big Tippy landed just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula with a violently colossal splashdown as seen below. Kablooski! The mass explosion that followed blew a chunk in the earth 15 miles deep and more than 60 miles wide. Terrible earthquakes shook the entire planet as a gigantic tsunami sent a towering wall of seawater rolling across the continents. What's happening? Cried George. That dumb nuclear bomb, shouted Super Mega Tippy. It just triggered the start of this Cenozoic era. I'm gonna become extinct if I don't get out of here. Quickly, Super Mega Tippy set its Tinkle time travel meter for 64,793,216 years into the future and pressed the away we go button. Suddenly, gigantic bolts of lightning began shooting out of Super Mega Tippy's drool pants as a ball of blue light enveloped him. Quick crackers cried Harold as thick volcanic ash began blocking out the sun. Fly into the blue light! It's our only chance to escape! Crackers pointed its long reptilian neck toward the crackling orb, and the four friends sailed downward into the blinding blue lightning. Chapter 11, 106,784 years ago. A flash of white lights filled the mid-afternoon haze of the Pleistocene epoch. The crystal blue lake that had once been there was now gone. This place were vast savanna plains stretching out to thick forested hillsides and rocky caves. All was quiet except for the sounds of insects and birds and a faint rhythmic drumming far off in the forest. Where are we? Asked George. I think the better question would be, when are we? Said Harold. Super Mega Tippy was surprised to see George and Harold and Crackers and Sulu. Whoa, he said. It looks like we have 4 stowaways. But what Super Mega Tippy did not realize is that he had a 5th stowaway as well. It was slightly younger Tiny Tippy, who at that very moment was carefully crawling down his button on Super Mega Tippy's shirt. But what Super Mega Tippy did not realize is that he had a 5th stowaway as well. It was slightly younger Tiny Tippy, who at that very moment was carefully crawling down his button on Super Mega Tippy's shirt. The stupid Mega Tippy thinks he can lie to me and get away with this, said slightly younger Tiny Tippy as he jumped onto the control panel. But I'll teach him a lesson he'll never forget. Slightly younger Tiny Tippy pried up an aluminum vent and slipped effortlessly into the wiry innards of the control panel. First, he reversed the polarity on the emulsifying sausage lunch inhibitor. Then he switched the blue and the green wires on the reverse emulgating tractile mech fractionalizer. Finally, he snipped all the wires to the Freezy B4000's off button. Ha, laughed slightly younger Tiny Tippy. Next time that big jerk uses the Freezy B4000, he's going to get a big surprise. Meanwhile, the drama outside was getting serious. Super Mega Tippy swatted at our heroes as they soared bravely through the Ionian sky. Cracker skillfully swooped and dove and looped as the Extendo Flux Mechanic Gripper was after him. But Super Mega Tippy quickly became impatient and unleashed 2 more Extendo Flux Mechanic Grippers. Poor Crackers could not outmaneuver them all, and the 4 friends were soon captured. I've got you now, screamed Super Mega Tippy. Hey look, said George, pointing at the ground behind Super Mega Tippy. There's a bunch of cavemen down there watching us. I'm not falling for that trick, said Super Mega Tippy. As soon as I turn around, you guys are going to try to escape. No, seriously, cried Harold. You're not lying. Look behind you. Super Mega Tippy glanced quickly and noticed that the boys were indeed telling the truth. Standing behind them at the edge of the forest were about a dozen very surprised-looking cavemen starting up in dumbfounded bewilderment. Your boys shouldn't be surprised to see cavemen, said Super Mega Tippy as he studied the strange prehistoric people. We're in the middle of Pleistocene epoch. This is around the time that the first human family started to appear on Earth. I'll bet your dumb kids didn't know that, did you? Super Mega Tippy turned to smile haughtily at George and Harold, but of course they were gone. We have bitten through 3 of the Extendo Flux Mechanic Grippers and the 4 friends that fluttered away. No, screamed Super Mega Tippy as he stomped his gigantic feet in frustration. The startled cavemen screamed and ran in terror back to their homes in the deep forest. Super Mega Tippy grabbed some strong vines and tied Mr. Krub to a boulder underneath the waterfall. There, he sneered. This should keep you moist and powerless until I get back. Then he stormed into the forest, searching for George and Harold and their pets. Chapter 12, Calling at all cavemen. How are we ever going to get out of this mess? Asked Harold. I don't know, said George, but we're going to need Tippy Tinkle Trotter if you ever want to get back home. Are you kidding? Said Harold. We can't trust the guy. He can't even trust himself. I know, said George, but Tippy has a time machine and we don't. We're going to have to defeat him. But we need an army to defeat that guy, said Harold. Let's go get an army, said George. The four friends glided above the grassy plains as they followed the sound of beating drums. Soon they arrived at the forest. The drumming was getting louder. Cracker swooped down and landed behind some bushes near the caves. Just beyond them was the cave people village. George and Harold and Crackers and Zulu peeked over the thick bushes as they watched the cavemen and cavewomen go out about their daily routines. They seemed peaceful, so George decided to speak up. Hello, said George. We come in peace. We're friends. The cave people looked confused and startled. They did not seem to understand. Maybe they don't speak English, said Harold. Hello, said George, who only spoke one other language. Iway K and way espat SK Iway array in the fray. That didn't work either. The cave people grunted and sniffed at George and Harold and their pissed, but they said nothing. Suddenly, off in the distance, the sound of gigantic footsteps came thundering through the forest. Tippy was coming, and he was getting closer and closer with each terrifying stomp. I know you're in that village, Tippy screamed, but you can't hide from me. Tippy crashed through the trees and stomped into the village, kicking over huts and smooshing everyone in sight. The terrified cave people grabbed their children and ran for the safety of the caves behind their village. George and Harold and Crackers and Sulu ran into the caves also and hid with the cave people in the darkness as the destruction outside continued. After a while, some cave teenagers started a campfire. The flickering light illuminated the massive walls of the caves as the cave people whimpered and huddled together in horror. Wow, said George, some army they had turned out to be. It's not their fault, said Harold. They've never seen giant robo-pants before. They're just scared. If you can only communicate with them, said George, there's gotta be some way to reach them. Harold looked back at the giant blank walls of the cave. How about pictures, he asked. Hey, good idea, said George. Harold walked over to the campfire and grabbed a charred smoking stick from the burning cinders. Then he went to one side of the giant cave and started to create the world's first cave drawing. At first, the cave people were astonished. They had never seen anybody draw before. They laughed and pointed and jumped up and down every time Harold drew something new. But when Harold drew Tippy and his robo-pants, the cave people became frightened. They grunted nervously and lowered their heads in fear and submission. Wow, said Harold. How are we ever going to change their minds about Tippy? I know, said George. Let's make a growless comic. You'll understand that. Good idea, said Harold. Let's do it. So George and Harold found a ladder and began creating their very first comic. The cave people watched with excitement as George and Harold's tale unfolded. Soon, their opinions about Tippy and his robo-pants began to evolve. Chapter 13, the world's oldest comics, starring Ook and Gluck. Okay, here's the picture. So here's a dinosaur walking across, seeing a butterfly, sniffing some flower, continued to jump, fell in the ocean, met a fish, played with the fish, said goodbye to the fish, and tried to walk back home, got hurt. He got hurt on Tippy Tinkle Trousers. Tippy Tinkle Trousers tried to attack him. The dinosaur ran quickly to his home, and Tippy Tinkle Trousers tried to follow him, but now it doesn't work since the dinosaur's home is too small. Tippy Tinkle Trousers, so he just smashed it. And after he smashed it, he picked the home up, and he noticed that the dinosaur was crawling underneath the ground. He's underground. He tried to walk through the ground, and he went outside. And he noticed that he was on a tree branch. Tippy Tinkle Trousers noticed him and tried to grab him and hit him. The dinosaur fell down. He landed on the water. He called for help. And two cavemen, Ook and Gluck, spotted him. They tried to rescue him, and eventually they did. Ook and Gluck and the dinosaur met Tippy Tinkle Trousers. Tippy Tinkle Trousers was chasing them. Now Tippy doesn't know where they are hiding because they're in a rainforest. And they set a trap to Tippy Tinkle Trousers, I think. Yeah, Tippy Tinkle Trousers noticed it. He tried to chase him, but he fell onto the trap, fell down, and he fell on the ground, okay? He fell down the cliff. He muttered some words. His head got bumped on a tree bark, and the three friends started laughing. Tippy charged back through them again. They ran again. They hid on a tree. Tippy tried to kick it, but eventually it was an elephant. It wasn't a tree. Now Tippy was in big trouble. The elephant glared at him. Now Tippy is getting chased by the elephants. Tippy now fell onto that cliff again. He landed. He fell down. He muttered some words. He muttered some displeasant words. A pineapple was bumped on his head. The three friends, Ook and Gluck, the dinosaur, was laughing. Then Tippy came back and charged towards them. Tippy now ran as fast as he could. Luckily, the three friends were able to hide on a tree. They had an idea. They saw some bees. Looks like Ook and Gluck are setting a trap again. They called back Tippy Tinkle Trousers. He didn't know where they are, but he saw a snowman boat and a pineapple. He reached toward the snowman. The snowman reached toward the pineapple. The pineapple reached to the bee. And the bee started to attack Tippy Tinkle Trousers. Now Tippy Tinkle Trousers was in big trouble. He fell onto the cliff again. He landed on the ground. He muttered some displeasant words. Got bonked. The three friends laughed. The bees are continuing to attack Tippy Tinkle Trousers. Now Tippy ran as fast as he could. He's in big trouble. Okay, end of the comic. I'm not good at describing stuff like that. Chapter 14, Clash of the Cavemen. Once the cave people read George and Harold's cave comic, they stopped being afraid of Tippy and his robopath. Now they were inspired. Quickly, they divided themselves into groups and began planning their counterattacks. George and Harold watched as the cave people grabbed their own charred sticks from the fire and began drawing out elaborate plans. Even though they could only speak in grunts and groans, they all understood comics and they all knew what needed to be done. Before long, everyone high-fived and sneaked out the back of the cave. The cave people ran up the hillside, tying vines between trees, placing banana peels all over the ground, and setting booby traps everywhere they could think of. Once everyone was ready, George and Harold and Zulu hopped onto Cracker's back, and they flew around the cave to where Tippy was still busy destroying the village. "Oh, Tippy," called George, "where have you been? You're going to miss all the fun." Tippy turned quickly and chased after the four friends, who led them directly into the cave people's traps. As Tippy ran, he glanced down and noticed a vine tied tightly between two tree trunks. Quickly, he screeched to a halt. "Ha ha ha," Tippy bellowed. "Did you think I was going to fall for that lame trick?" Tippy rolled his eyes in contempt as he jumped over the vine and landed on a bunch of banana peels. Yes! Tippy screamed as he slipped and crashed to the ground. Bam! Then Tippy started sliding on the banana peels down the steep hill toward the cliff below. "No!" Tippy wailed as he slid faster and faster. Finally, Tippy flipped over the edge of the cliff and tumbled into the tar pit. Below was the mighty kersploosh. Tippy was ferocious. He pulled himself up out of the sticky black tar and screamed, "Is that all you got?" The cave people had a few more surprises in store for Tippy. "You stupid cave stirrers," Tippy screamed as he finally came to his senses. "Is that all you got?" But unfortunately for Tippy, there was still more to come. "Ah!" screamed Tippy as his tar-covered robo butt caught on fire. Tippy ran shrieking toward a small pond as the flames spread everywhere. Finally, the streaming robotic fireball plunged deep into the cooling waters of this pond with a gigantic splash. George, Harold, Cracker, Sulu, and the cave people gathered around the edge of the pond to see what had become of their evil nemesis. For a few minutes, everything was calm. Then the surface of the water began to tremble. Suddenly, Tippy's bruised, battered, and burned robo body rose from the bubbling depths of the pond. "Is that all you got?" Tippy demanded as he lunged toward the cave people and chased after them. But unfortunately for Tippy, he still had much more unpleasantness in store of him. Chapter 15, the incredibly graphic violence chapter, Part 1 in Flipporama. Introducing Flipporama. Here's how it works. As any historian will tell you, Flipporamas were first created nearly 200,000 years ago on stone tablets. These cheesy animations were lots of fun to flip, but they were so heavy they often resulted in smashed thumbs and broken fingers. Ancient Egyptians, desperate to solve this problem, invented papyrus around 3,500 BC so that Flipporamas could be flipped safely by everybody. So please enjoy this ancient tradition, now improved and enhanced by the modern-day miracle of paper. Okay, now, let's see. Boulder Bash. Okay, they're continuing to destroy Tippy Tinkle Trousers. It's a boulder now. They smashed 2 boulders onto his ears. Rhinoplasty. They bought a rhino and the rhino attacked Tippy Tinkle Trousers with his horns. And timber trauma. One of the cavemen and installed a trap and give Tippy a wedgie. And now that's it. Chapter 16. What really caused the Ice Age? Is that all you moaned Tippy as he fell to his battered, smoldering knees? Tippy's gigantic robotic pants might have been a technological marvel, but they were no match for cavemen cleverness. Tippy was in trouble, but he still had one last trick up his sleeve. He reached down to his control panel and pressed the Freezy Beam 4000's button. Suddenly, the battered top of the RoboPass opened up, and the Freezy Beam 4000 was maniacally from the robotic innards. Instantly, a massive burst of ice blasted at the cave people. Fortunately, they all got out of the way just in time, but the ice kept blasting anyway. "What's wrong with this thing?" said Tippy as he pressed the Freezy Beam 4000's off button repeatedly. The button was stuck, so Tippy pulled the emergency shut-off lever. That it wouldn't budge either. "It's almost as if anyone has just tampered with the control panel," said Tippy, unaware that tiptoeing across the floor at that very moment was someone who had just tampered with his control panel. Slightly younger Tiny Tippy, still angry that he had been betrayed by his treacherous twin, had rigged the Freezy Beam 4000 so that it could never be turned off. Now the ice beam was going berserk. Glaciers of synthetic ice programmed to last for 70,000 years cascaded from Tippy's Freezy Beam 4000, encasing the trees and securing its robotic feet to the frozen ground. Things were getting out of control. Tippy quickly crawled under his command center, desperately trying to figure out a way to turn off the spewing icebergs. It was slightly younger Tiny Tippy's chance. He reached out of his global gloves and grabbed the Goosey Grove 4000. Then, with a mighty leap, he jumped through the opening at the top of the robotic's legs and hopped down to the frosty ground below. The ice was spreading at a dangerous rate. Slightly younger Tiny Tippy needed to act fast, with no time to spare. He grabbed a piece of bubble gum from his pocket, chewed it up, read the comic on the wrapper, and jammed the sticky bubble gum into the button of the Goosey Grove 4000. "Now," said slightly younger Tiny Tippy, "when I press this button down, it'll stick." That's exactly what happened. Berserk! A continuous beam of gross energy burst forth from the goose-shaped contraption. Quickly, Slightly Younger Tiny Tippy jumped into the energy beam and grew to an impressive 30 feet tall. Awesome, cried the younger Tiny Tippy as he jumped in front of the beam again and again like a child leaping through a lawn sprinkler. Each time he hit the beam of energy, he grew another 30 feet. And huge, slightly younger Tiny Tippy was now towering above the earth at an impressive 120 feet. He reached down to pick up the Goosey Gopher down with his robo glove. Just a few more zaps and I'll be whoops, cried the younger Tiny Tippy as the Goosey Gopher down slipped out of his robo glove and tumbled down onto the thick ice below him. Unfortunately, the continuously zapping beam of energy was now pointed directly at the gigantic mountain of ice, which caused it to grow and expand and spread out even farther. Quickly, the ice began pushing its way east across the Ohio Valley and west into the part of the earth that would one day be known as Indiana. And it began shoving its way north into Michigan and Canada and beyond. An accidental glacial period was developing rapidly, and Slightly Younger Tiny Tippy needed to get out of there fast if he wanted to avoid it. Chapter 17. Have a nice day. George and Haro grabbed their pets and ran as fast as they could to escape the rapidly spreading ice fields. Their caveman friends were right behind them. Poor Cracker, said George. You've got to take Sulu and get out of here. It's your only hope. But something was wrong with Crackers. The usually perky but tall doctor seemed to be getting sick. Maybe he's catching a cold, cried Harold. He's not used to the freezing temperatures. Soon they came upon the massive waterfall where Mr. Krub was tied up. The ice was already beginning to turn the flowing water into frozen sludge. We got to rescue Mr. Krub, said George. But there's no time, said Harold. We'll all get frozen. You don't have a choice, said George. We can't just leave him there. George and Harold ran toward Mr. Krub and began pulling at the vines holding him in place. When the cave people saw what the boys were trying to do, they also stopped running and came forward to help. But it was too late. The ice got closer and closer as everyone pulled desperately at the vines in the rapidly freezing water. The frigid slushy water wrapped around Harold's shirt as thick as encased George's body. Oh, well, said Harold as he shivered in the rapidly expanding permafrost. At least we will try our best. Goodbye, said George as the ice flowed up around his face and covered the top of his head. The end had finally come for George and Harold. It was all over. The only hope they had left was that maybe someday in the future an archaeologist would dig up their fossilized bones that have a lot of explaining to do. But even that hope seemed far-fetched at best. Chapter 18. Something much less far-fetched. Crash! Suddenly the ice around George and Harold and their cave people friends shouted with a mighty karate chop. You didn't think I'd leave you behind, did you? Said the younger Tiny Tippy as he scooped everyone up with one gigantic shovel of his robo glove. Everyone held on to one another for warmth as the younger Tiny Tippy trudged south across the frosty glaciers. It was about this time that George and Harold realized that Mr. Krub's face was no longer wet. It had been freeze-dried, along with everything else around them. So they snapped their fingers and suddenly our miraculous hero returned. Gee, it's been nippy today, said Captain Underpants. Forget about that now, said George, shivering. Quickly, he and Harold put Captain Underpants in on the severity of the situation, and before long they all had a plan. Captain Underpants flew out of sight of the younger Tiny Tippy's robo glove and grabbed his massive belt buckle. With one sensational swoosh, Captain Underpants ripped Tippy's pants, belt and all, right off of his robo legs. Hey, no fair, screamed slightly younger Tiny Tippy as he stood shivering on his gigantic robotic boxer shorts. Captain Underpants quickly tied and ripped pants legs in a knot and told everybody to climb aboard. Soon, all of the good guys were tucked securely into the polyester cotton blend trousers and flying someplace safe and warm. They zipped across the vast ocean and finally came to a place that was now covered with ice. Captain Underpants flew down and landed near the starboard point of the cave in southern France. George and Harold said goodbye to their cave people friends. We sure hope you like your new home here, said George. Keep drawing, said Harold, and take care of our paws, Crackers and Sulu. Okay? Wait a minute, said George. Can't leave our pets here. Crackers is sick. He needs to see a doctor. Oh yeah, said Harold. I almost forgot. Got to get to the future somehow. Quickly, Captain Underpants flew George and Harold and Crackers and Sulu back to the frozen glaciers of North America. If they were ever going to get back to modern times, slightly younger Tiny Tippy was their best bet. Chapter 19, The Vow. When their 5-year-olds finally reached slightly younger Tiny Tippy, he didn't seem at all surprised to see them. I'm not at all surprised to see you, said slightly younger Tiny Tippy as he sipped casually from his water bottle. I bet you guys want to ride back to the future, don't you? We sure do, said Captain Underpants. Gee, that would be swell. Slightly younger Tiny Tippy pointed his water bottle at Captain Underpants' face and squeezed. Splash! Well, what the heck is going on here? Said Mr. Krub. Their 5-year-olds began falling to the frozen ground below. Screamed Harold, you're doomed! Fortunately, slightly younger Tiny Tippy caught them before they hit the ground. But unfortunately, he had something even worse in mind for them than a 120-foot drop to their deaths. As slightly younger Tiny Tippy set his Tinkle Time travel meter for a date in the upcoming future, George and Harold bemoaned their continually recurring predicament. Whoa, here we are again, said George, back in the same mess we always end up in. I know, said Harold. It seems like every time we crack a joke or make a comic book, something terrible happens. You know, said George, if we ever get out of this mess, I think we should stop goofing around all the time. Yeah, I agree, said Harold. We need to quit making comic books and start paying more attention to our schoolwork. And as blue, crackling light began to envelop them, George and Harold made a vow to change their ways. They pledged to give up pranks and jokes and comic books, and they promised to begin taking life seriously and to start acting like responsible grown-ups. Wow, said George as they all disappeared into a crackling whirlpool of liquid time. You were mature already. Me too, said Harold. Chapter 20. 30 years from now. Suddenly, a giant ball of blue lightning exploded in the southern end of a busy Midwestern city. George and Harold looked around them and saw the familiar sights of cars and houses and fast food restaurants. We're home, cried George. It sure seems that way, said Harold. But how come everything looks so old? Because we're not back where we started, laughed slightly younger Tiny Tippy. You're 30 years in the future. How did we come to the future? Asked George. Because, said Tippy, the last time I got rid of Captain Underpants, the whole road was destroyed. I just wanted to make sure that the road would survive the next 30 years without him, and it looks like it can. Tippy marched over to the elementary school and placed George and Harold and their 2 pets on the ground. Get comfortable, boys, said Tippy. I'm about to destroy Captain Underpants once and for all, and I want you kids to have the best seats in the house. George and Harold looked up in horror as slightly younger Tiny Tippy began knocking Mr. Krub around like a beanbag. I can't watch, said Harold as he petted his pet pterodactyl, who only seemed to be getting sicker. Sulu scampered around the playground, finding twigs and branches and leaves, and weaving them into a nest to help keep Crackers warm. Remember, said George, if you ever get out of this mess, you're going to straighten up and start acting like grown-ups. That's right, said Harold, as he placed Crackers into the warm nest that Sulu had made. You're going to be responsible and mature from now on. As Tippy kicked Mr. Krub like a soccer ball, George and Harold got distracted by a loud commotion behind them. 2 teachers were yelling at the students on the playground, instructing them all to stop paying attention to the fierce struggle raging above them, and demanding that they straighten up and start acting like grown-ups. As the battle intensified, the obnoxious teachers screamed louder and louder, hurling threats and insults at the curious students. Boy, I sure wish those 2 teachers would chill out, said George. I know, said Harold. They're yelling so loud I can't even hear the fight. Suddenly, a rusty green 2034 Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot, and a familiar-looking character came storming out. was Mr. Krub, only this was a 30-year older version of Mr. Krub. He was wrinklier than George and Haro were used to, with a scuffy white beard and mustache and pants pulled up to his armpits. Mr. Krub marched toward the playground, opened up his mouth, and screamed 4 words that sent shivers down George's and Haro's spine. "Mr. Beard! Mr. Hutchins!" George and Haro froze. "Oh no," whispered Haro. "Our Mr. Krub recognized us." "What are we going to do?" asked George. "How are we ever going to get out of this mess?" Oh, Mr. Krub marched towards George and Haro, getting closer and closer as they shivered in horror. Then old man Mr. Krub walked past George and Haro and continued walking through the playground. "Mr. Beard and Mr. Hutchins," he screamed again. "Get those kids inside right now." "Who is he talking to?" asked George. "I have no idea," said Haro. Finally, the 2 screaming teachers turned around. Chapter 21. George and Haro's worst nightmare. You know that feeling you get when your stomach sinks? It usually occurs just after the realization that something bad has happened or is going to happen. People often feel this way when they discover they forgot to study for a big test, or they're going to miss their school bus, or the giant gulp of milk they just swallowed expired 3 weeks ago. Now imagine the feeling magnified about 1 billion times. This is the feeling that occurred in George's and Haro's stomachs when the 2 obnoxious screaming teachers turned around. It was them. More preciously, it was future versions of themselves. George and Haro had grown up to be teachers, but they weren't the nice, wonderful, imaginative teachers that you might be used to. No, sir. George and Haro had evolved into terrifying, boring, and vengeful teachers that they were used to. Mr. Krub squished between 40-year-old Haro and 39 3/4-year-old George and slapped a sweaty arm around each of them. I'm sure I'm glad you fellas are here," said Mr. Krub. "It's tough job making everybody miserable, isn't it?" "It sure is, boss," said 40-year-old Haro. "You know, it's hard to believe that you guys used to be the craziest kids in the school," said Mr. Krub. "Thank goodness you both started taking life seriously." "Yeah," said 39 3/4-year-old George. "One day about 30 years ago we saw the error of our ways, so we made a vow to straighten up and fly right." Yep, said 40-year-old Haro. "From then on, it was nothing but serious study, strict discipline, and hey, you kids, cut that out!" George and Haro looked nervously at each other after adult doubles continued screaming at the unfortunate children on the playground. Remember that vow we just made to stop goofing around and start acting more like grown-ups?" asked Haro. "Yeah," said George. "Then we should vow a new vow that unvows the old vow we just vowed," said Haro. "Let's get vowing," said George. So as the terrifying battle raged above their heads, George and Haro shook hands and promised to always be themselves. They pledged to keep goofing around and to make even more comic books, and to stop taking life so darn seriously. "Let's daydream more too," said George. "Yeah," said Haro. "Enough of the sitting still and paying attention stuff." As George and Haro vowed their new vow, something strange began to happen. The soft wind started to blow, the sound of wind chimes began to tinkle in the air, and the grown-up versions of George and Haro slowly disappeared. They vanished gradually at first. Then after about a minute or so, Mr. Krub was left standing there all by himself. "Wow," said George. "You mean it's that easy? All you have to do is make up your mind and stick to it and you can change the future?" "Yeah, I guess so," said Haro. George and Haro walked up to old Mr. Krub, who was looking a little confused, and snapped their fingers. Suddenly, a familiar smile stretched across old Mr. Krub's face. "Well," said George, pointing up at the terrifying battle exploding above their heads, "what are you waiting for?" "Yeah," said Haro, "you're getting your butt kicked up there. Go help yourself." Quickly, old Mr. Krub tore off his clothes, dashed into the school, grabbed the red curtain from his office, and flew out of his window with a triumphant tra-la-la. Old Captain Underpants immediately rescued Mr. Krub and brought him back down to the ground. "Wow, I'm sure glad that's over with," said Mr. Krub. "Relax, bub," said George. "We're just getting started." And with the snap of George's and Haro's fingers, Mr. Krub returned to his heroic self once again and flew into the sky to fight alongside the future self. Chapter 22. The incredibly graphic Violent Chapter Part 2 in Fliporama. A fistful of nose hairs. Okay. They're tickling Tippy's nostrils. A sky-high kick in the eye. Now they're kicking his eyes. The tooth hurts, or now they're hurting their teeth. They're pulling down the cheeks. Tippy has. And now let's go right into the next chapter. Chapter 23. How the universe really began. Slightly younger tiny Tippy might have been ginormous and powerful, but he was no match for two Captain Underpantses. He fell to his massive robotic knees in a thunderous cloud of agonizing defeat. Boom! But slightly younger tiny Tippy wasn't ready to give up just yet. He reached down to his control panel and pressed the nuclear bomb button, which is conveniently located between the strawberry milkshake button and the low-fat mint chocolate chip cookie dispenser. Suddenly, a panel at the rear of the Roboboxers opened up, and the 160-ton thermonuclear bomb emerged. "You might have defeated me," said slightly younger tiny Tippy, and he pressed the button. And that started the countdown to doomsday, but I'll still get the last laugh. Suddenly, a light on the side of the bomb began to flash red. A computerized voice emanating from the bomb's arming system began the countdown. "This bomb will detonate in 60 seconds, said the voice. "No," screamed George. "The last time one of those bombs went off, it killed all the dinosaurs." "But this bomb is way bigger than the last one," cried Harold. "This bomb will blow up the entire planet." "Correction," said the younger tiny Tippy. "I've just activated my gravitational levitator, which will give this bomb more destructive power than a supernova. This thing's gonna blow up our entire galaxy. This bomb will detonate in 30 seconds, said the computerized voice. "Doomed again," screamed Harold. "Well," said George, "it was fun while it lasted. So long, old friend." "Bye," said Harold. As the two friends shook hands, a huge gust of wind almost blew them over. Smoosh! With Crackers and Zulu, George and Harold's pets whooshed by them as they flew up to the opening of the radioactive Roboboxers and flirted down to the command center inside. Zulu's bionic brain quickly figured out the complex control panel of the Tinkle Time Travel Meter, and together, the two animal friends began mashing down the buttons on the switchboard. "This bomb will detonate in 15 seconds, said the computerized voice as Crackers feverishly picked at the controls. Finally, Zulu pushed down hard on the "Away we go" button, and the radioactive Roboboxers were enveloped in a gigantic ball of blue light. Suddenly, the radioactive Roboboxers and their three occupants were zapped back in time 13.7 billion years ago, back to a time before time existed. Before anything existed, there was no Earth, no sun, no planets, no universe. There's nothing all, except for the computerized countdown on a 160-ton thermonuclear bomb. This bomb will detonate in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Chapter 24, to make a long story short, kabloosh! Chapter 25, the big kabloosh theory. The heat from the exploding supernova caused the universe to spring into existence and expand rapidly. As it expanded, it also began to cool, allowing its energy to be converted into lots of different subatomic particles. It wasn't long before these particles combined to form atoms, which combined to form matter, which combined to form stars and planets and you and me and everything around us. Scientists usually refer to this event as the Big Bang Theory. But to be honest, the explosion sounded was more like a kabloosh than a simple bang. I guess it just had to be there. Chapter 26. What have we learned today? Remember at the beginning of this book when I told you you'd be smarter by page 210 than the world's most brilliant scientist? Well, congratulations! You know what's killed the dinosaurs, who started the last ice age, and how our universe actually began. Unfortunately, this information is not something you can use for any practical benefits. If you ever get tested on this stuff in school, please don't answer with the truth. I can guarantee you it will not go well. This is the unfortunate fate with super smart people like us. This is really a place where we can use our vast knowledge, so we must be content to simply roll our eyes at our people, shaking our heads patronizingly, and sing that inspiring old song that's smarter than you, na 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 na. For your convenience, cheat music has been provided on the following page. You can see that this boy got an F as a scientist answering the questions about how the rule was generated. Okay, now let's read the first question. How did the universe begin? Was slightly younger tiny Tippy blew up a giant nuclear bomb 13.7 billion years ago. That actually is correct in this book. What caused this to happen? A pterodactyl and a bionic hamster. What is the theory called? The big caboose theory. How did the dinosaurs become extinct? The Tippy Tinkle Trail that exploded in Mexico 65 million years ago. What caused the last major ice age? The 3D Beam 4000 combined with the Goosey Grow 4000. Who made the rules for drawings? Jordan Harrow. It says it's all correct in this book, but he got an F in this quiz. So make sure you don't do that, and I won't. Oh yeah, I'm smarter than you. Music and Lyrics by Albert Einstein. Okay. Chapter 27. Meanwhile, 30 years from now. Where did they go? Cried George as he looked up into the sky where Tippy's radioactive robot boxer had just stood. They disappeared, said Harold. They just vanished without a trace. Captain Underpants and his bearded old twin flew down to George and Harold. What are you going to do now? asked old Captain Underpants. Why don't you go fly into that school and splash some water on your face, said Harold. Sure thing, boss, said old Captain Underpants. He flew straight to the nearest drinking fountain, and in no time at all he returned to his crabby old self. Well, said George, what are we going to do now? We're stuck in the future without a time machine. George, said Harold as he looked down at Cracker's nest. We've got no money, no identification, or no nothing, said George. George, said Harold again, looking closer into the nest. It's not like we can just go back to school and start over where we left off, said George. George, said Harold a third time. What's after finally? Harold pointed at the nest that Zulu had made for Crackers. In the center of the nest were 3 purple and orange speckled eggs. George's mouth dropped open. What are those? He cried. I guess Crackers wasn't sick after all, said Harold. He was pregnant. But Crackers is a boy. Boys can't lay eggs. Maybe Crackers is a girl, said Harold. Oh yeah, said George. I guess that would make more sense. George and Harold carefully picked up the eggs and examined them. We've got to keep these eggs going until Cracker and Sue get back, said George. Oh, we don't know where they went, said Harold. We don't even know if they will be back. Then we're just going to have to raise these eggs on our own, said George. That's the least we can do. Chapter 28, the final chapter of the very last Captain Underpants epic novel. Jordan Harold and Captain Underpants each held an egg close to their bodies to keep them warm. Then they started walking. Where are we going to go? Asked Harold. I guess we should try our houses first, said George. Maybe our parents still live there. Good idea, said Harold. Suddenly, a bright ball of flashing light appeared in front of them. The flashing got more and more intense until it finally exploded with a blast of crackling lightning. And there, where the flashing ball of light had been, was a gigantic, glow-in-the-dark robotic squid. The top of the robo-squid opened, and Jordan Harold's nemesis, Melvin Sneely, popped his head up. Greetings, said Melvin. I have come from the past to bring you guys back home. Hey, wait a minute, said George incredulously. How did you know where to find us? This an old friend led me to you, said Melvin. Okay, said George. Works for me, said Harold. You see, Melvin continued. When I designed Zulu's robotic endoskeleton, I installed a boring, said George, interrupting. Yeah, said Harold. We stopped listening like 10 seconds ago. Well, listen to this, Melvin shouted as he reached down and grabbed our heroes with his robo-squid arms. You 3 losers and your precious eggs are coming with me. Where are you taking us? Cried George. You'll see soon enough, Melvin laughed maniacally. You'll see soon enough. Suddenly, the gigantic glow-in-the-dark time-traveling super squid began to shake and sputter in a buzzing ball of electrified light. Oh no, cried George. Here we go again, cried Harold. And that's it for the 10th novel of Captain Underpants. It isn't the end. We have the 11th novel and the 12th novel. We have 2 books left. And if I see the news, Captain Underpants 13 is coming out in November 2022. Okay, I'm recording this in June now, so and it's 5 months later, so I'll also film this. So I can actually film 3 books of Captain Underpants this year. If we're watching this in 2022. Okay. We're just looking at like time traveling about life, yeah. Stuff like the science. Right? I think like I read all of the Captain Underpants books, the 12 books, but like 9 and the 10 was the most fun to me. Yeah, like time traveling, everything was great, okay. So I hope you liked that video, and the full read aloud book video is also coming soon, okay? So make sure you stick to that, and I hope I can see you in the next one. Get ready, everyone. Captain Underpants 11 is coming soon.